Welcome back to Emmy's Rabbit Holes. This is my channel for making videos on different hyperfixations that I have. As a general rule on this channel, I make one video per hyperfixation. I'm breaking my own rules here a little bit because a couple of weeks ago I published a video about dating advice kind of related to like manosphere and gender issues, trying to just give advice from a pretty ordinary woman, because I don't think that there's enough like just kind of ordinary everyday people talking about like the realities of relationships out there. However, on that video, somebody left a comment that I just have not been able to stop thinking about because it really highlighted what I thought was a critically important aspect that I had missed in that video. And that was that a lot of men who get pulled into the manosphere or who are frustrated with what information is out there about dating, the frustration is that the advice, including the vast majority of what I shared in my video, is aimed at what to do on a date or in the early phases of a relationship. And there is a segment of people who have never had a date, or they maybe get a couple of dates a year if they are putting all of their effort into trying to get people to go on dates with them. And that just makes them feel really unheard, and it's just not useful information if you aren't getting to that date step. And so I just have kept thinking about that, and I wanted to kind of do a shorter video, but one that adds on that is specifically speaking to that experience. Because I can see how if somebody has never gotten a date or very rarely has gotten dates, that could really increase the sense that the reason I'm being denied must be based on my appearance, based on my income, based on other like shallow or superficial feeling details of me, because why else would I be getting rejected before I'm even given a chance? And I can totally understand how that logic could seem incredibly logical. And I still very much stand by the underlying message in my first video, which is that the world of dating advice frequently puts way too much emphasis on appearance and on these other superficial traits. Not to say that attraction doesn't matter. I think it does to a degree. I do not think that that is anywhere near the end-all be-all of what gets a first date, and certainly is not what sustains relationships. I want to explain my theory on what is going on there. To put it really, really simply, I think it is frequently, it's either asking the wrong people or asking too early, or both. It's always tricky to talk about these gender things because I imagine that a lot of men who are feeling this way are just frustrated in general, but especially frustrated with feeling like they are putting so much effort into this. And so then to tell them that like they kind of have to put in more effort, I assume that that doesn't feel good. And unfortunately, I think that's the truth, because the experience of women is that dating is scary. That's not fair for good guys. And also, I absolutely would and do tell my friends, my nieces, that like you have to be cautious. You have to not be trusting, because otherwise it's a risk. My belief is that when a guy asks a girl in public, or that he is an acquaintance with, doesn't know super well, and her response is any version of no, very frequently it is still not a sign that you aren't tall enough, or that you aren't handsome enough, or you don't make enough money. Very, very frequently, I think it still comes down to safety. And I would wonder if a lot of men don't fully recognize that, because you know that you're a safe guy. And I think some women like myself are aware that we are just kind of afraid of men as a default. I think a lot of other women are as afraid of men as I am, and don't consciously recognize it and try to delude themselves about that. I wonder if what guys who say, I see these other guys and they can just ask a woman out on a whim and she'll say yes to him, and then they take that as evidence that it is just about looks. I wonder if sometimes what happens is women, perhaps especially with lower self-esteem, and I think low self-esteem is very common because emotional neglect is common in childhood, and that's really the foundation of low self-esteem, and even in people who might sometimes seem confident and things like that. Anyway, if they see a guy that they perceive as being kind of out of their league, whether that is appearance or income or whatever else, they might then override that this isn't safe and I shouldn't do this instinct and take the risk anyway. But I personally would not advise that somebody do that. I think that is potentially dangerous. And I think the reason that that doesn't translate to the vast majority of other men is they're just not driven to override that risk. That doesn't mean you're ugly. It doesn't mean you're too short. It doesn't mean you're too fat. It doesn't mean you're not muscular enough. It doesn't mean you make too much money. It means they're more aware of the danger risk with the vast majority of people who aren't giving them that this person is out of my league vibe. Often when people approach dating, it's easy to have this mindset of, I need to convince this person that has caught my eye that they should be attracted to me. I need to get them to be interested. I need them to take a risk on me. And I think that makes sense, especially if your self-esteem isn't super strong. You might feel like, I need to convince people to be interested in me. Like, that's how I'm going to find my person. But I think that that actually is not a healthy way to go about it. I think the way that most lasting relationships really work is two people are just naturally interested in each other, and then one of them says like, hey, let's go on a date. So it's not so much about getting somebody who isn't interested in you to become interested in you. It's about finding somebody who actually is interested in you just on their own. And the problem with that, if you have a low self-esteem, is you assume that's not going to happen. But that does happen. That happens all the time. And it happens to short men, fat men, disabled men, nerdy men, men who don't make a lot of money. And because the world that we live in still primarily expects men to be the one to initiate requesting a date, and that is very vulnerable, and vulnerability is not something that's widely encouraged in our society in general, but especially for men. Like, you get these conflicting messages about vulnerability, right? Like, you're supposed to be stoic and all this nonsense, and that really contradicts vulnerability. I imagine that a lot of men, they see a woman that they would like to go on a date with and wait until they just barely get the courage to be able to ask her. And as soon as they feel safe enough to ask, they do. And that's too early in the vast majority of cases. And I think that's because as women, we need stronger senses of safety before going on a date than a man does. And so if you are just barely to a point where you feel safe asking, the odds of her feeling safe going somewhere with you is very low. And I think a lot of this flies in the face of the really common story about, like, don't get friend zoned, like you have to turn things romantic before you make friends. But I think that's really contradictory to reality in the vast majority of cases. I think where the fear of the friend zone comes from is the fact that sometimes you can be really good friends with people and they don't want to date you. I don't think that's because you were friends for too long first, or because you were too good of friends first. I think that is just that there's not romantic chemistry there. I don't think it's the friendship that made that a no-go. My own experience is my husband was my friend for a year or better before we started dating. And I've been with him since high school, so I don't have a lot of dating experience, but I did date one kid before him. So I was really young, but I was friends with that kid for, I don't really remember, but at least several weeks, maybe a few months. One of my best friends has been married over 25 years, and she was friends with her husband first. Like, I think friends first is actually very common, and it is a good way to ensure safety is there before taking a risk. What's tricky about this is I think some men try to befriend women only with the end goal of someday turning it romantic. And if that is your motivation, to put this in a really concise way, if you asking this girl to go on a date with you is going to feel like asking her to take a leap of faith or asking her to take a risk, that is too early. The ideal time to ask is after she feels comfortable and she wants this. So you're looking to build connection and then respond to the connection and the interest that is there, rather than creating interest, manufacturing interest. If the interest is already there and there is a level of trust and security and safety between you, that is a much, much easier yes, where, hey, would you take an emotional risk on going somewhere with me and see if you like me? It's just a very different question to be asking. And I think a lot of people look at dating more in the second category, which really contradicts the kind of innate need for a sense of safety and familiarity. The massive, massive downside to this is that it's a lot more about building friendships and other relationships and seeing where they go and then responding to what is naturally there. It's a lot of emotional work and a lot of social work to build up relationships. And also, I think the vast majority of people, that's where they find their marriage partners, is they created a relationship, not out of the blue, not out of being hit on in a bar, not out of a random message on a dating app, although, like, of course these things do happen, but usually there's some sort of a connection there first, a sense of security there first, and then you run with that rather than intentionally trying to concoct it or create it. I think a lot of people may be well aware of this, but I want to give a couple examples from my own life in situations where it was too early and I didn't really feel safe. So the first was the kid that I said I dated before my husband. And this one I did say yes to. So there wasn't an intense level of insecurity here, I guess, but I was only 14. We had been friends for a little bit, but he was older than me. He was able to drive, he had a car, and I had definitely liked him as a friend. I was not sure if I liked him more than that or not. Like I just didn't know him well enough yet. But I was in a place of kind of wanting to date. I liked the idea of having a boyfriend. So when he asked me on a date, I said yes, but I was somewhat reluctant and definitely was scared. The date that we went on didn't go terribly. I did end up being his girlfriend for a few months, but in hindsight, we did not get off to a great start. And part of that was he asked too early. I said yes, even though I knew I didn't feel very safe with it, so I had anxiety about the situation. He just drove me. We went to a movie, but he took a turn at one point, like in the car, that I was not expecting. Like it wasn't kind of the main path from where he had picked me up to the movie theater. And my anxiety really spiked because I thought, where is he taking me? And I know that's a little paranoid, but as a 14-year-old girl, I also, it's not crazy to not be super trusting of this person I don't know super well. And it ended up, he just kind of took some weird like back roads for no apparent reason. Like it kind of wasn't the most convenient way to get where he was going. Like, I don't know why he did that. Like, I'm sure there was no negative intent there. Like it was just his preference or who knows. And I didn't say anything because I felt awkward for being paranoid or whatever. But the fact that I even thought that, in hindsight, is a sign that like I should not have said yes to this, that I thought that this guy might hurt me or something. And he had been my friend for a while, but it was still too early. Like, so any future experiences like that, I would have said no to because I learned from that first experience that I had said yes too early. And also it was hard in those first few dates and in talking to him more to get a clear sense of how I really felt about him because of that anxiety. Like, whereas if you can connect with somebody and feel safe, then kind of that anxiety and noise is kind of set to the side and you can hear more of your feelings and you can have more clarity about how you really feel about this person if anxiety isn't like muffling everything. And so it took me a while to figure out if I had feelings for him or not. And I think a lot of that was that like anxiety was getting in the way. The other experience was just last year, and I'm married, but a guy came and knocked on my door and asked me if I wanted to go to coffee. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea what was going on. And even though I was at home and I live in town, it was the middle of the day, nothing super scary. Like he didn't have like a mask on to like obscure his identity or anything like that. Just having a guy come to my door and ask me like that out of the blue, my anxiety was like through the roof. And I later realized that he had just moved onto my street and had seen me, and you know, I don't know. I don't think most people would go knock on somebody's door, so I know that's like a little silly. And I think that his level of social awareness is going to be lower than most people watching this video. Almost everybody watching this video, I would imagine. But I think the biggest reason why that felt threatening to me is it just made it incredibly clear to me that he isn't aware of the experience of being a woman at all. Like, for him to not recognize that that is going to feel threatening to a woman was more disconcerting than anything else. Ironically, one of the most comforting things that I think men can do is to be aware of women's discomfort. Obviously, I'm married, so I'm not going to be interested in literally anybody else, but a better method would have been for him to strike up some sort of conversation while we're both outside or something. Maybe keep making conversation over time, and paying attention to how much give and take there is. If you are doing almost all of the talking, then that's a sign that this relationship is a bit one-sided. Whereas if I would start to say, hey, how are you? Like way before I see him, if I started to ask him about his interest, about his day, as these conversations go on, if I, start talking to him about my garden, something to continue the conversations that we have every time we run into each other that show interest, then those would be signs to continue. And that would very likely take months and months to get there. And only after very clear mutual interest in connecting was established would it make sense for him to ask me to coffee. Something that I don't fully know how to articulate because it's very subtle and I think it's very kind of intuitive is if you really struggle with being told no or accepting that perceived rejection, a lot of times I think women have a sense of that, and that also sends a signal that you're not a safe person. Like, it's incredibly common for women to say that they have a boyfriend when they don't, or to use some other excuse other than just saying, sorry, I don't know you well enough, I'm not interested. And that is largely because we know that saying, I have a husband, I have a boyfriend, that those are less offensive forms of rejection, and so we will rely on those if we suspect that a man can't handle the truth, that they would be rejected, that they might get angry, that they might insult us. That's an incredibly common experience for women, is to have a guy ask them on a date, they say no or no thank you in some form or fashion that is not terribly rude or whatever, and then the guy says something like, you're ugly anyway, or you're fat anyway, not interested in you anyway, or you're a bitch, or you're a cunt, or whatever it is. Most women have had that experience. Men like that, who cannot handle rejection, are not safe men to say yes to either. And the tricky thing is I can't really articulate what it is about a guy that makes me suspect that he might have a negative reaction to me saying no. And I certainly could be wrong about that some of the time, because how do you know if you don't actually test it? But I do kind of believe in some amount of like intuition and in and I think that we pick up on a lot more through nonverbal signals than what we might recognize. And so I think if you are a person who really truly can safely accept a no and can respect a no and not lash out at others who make you feel rejected, then my guess is that will make it safer for women to say yes to you, because they will have a sense that they can safely say no to you. Some specific signs that things are or are not going well, or that it is or is not time to ask a woman on a date. I'm reading my own notes, by the way. Signs that you should not ask are that you're feeling like you're really pushing the conversation. Like you have to keep thinking of the next thing to ask or the next thing to say. You're trying to extend the conversation, and it feels one-sided. That is a sign that she might just be being polite and is not truly engaged in the conversation. Two, if you aren't sure if she is just being kind, polite, respectful, or if she is genuinely seeking out this communication with you or this connection with you. Like, if you're not sure, it's probably better to assume that she's just being polite or courteous. If you don't know a whole lot about her yet, if you don't know if she's single, if you don't know what her job is, if you don't know if she has kids or not, if you don't know what kind of a family she came from, what some of her biggest passions or values or hobbies are, if you just don't really know her yet, it's too early. If you find yourself interacting with her and intentionally trying to showcase yourself in a way that makes her interested, that can just come from your own self-esteem issues, which is understandable. But also in a situation where somebody is genuinely interested in you already, like there's a connection going there, there's a vibe there, you're likely to pick up on that and to feel less of a need to be performative. Signs in a very early conversation with a stranger or brand new acquaintance that things actually do seem to be going in a good direction would be the conversation goes longer than you expected it to be, and they are extending the conversation too. It's not just that you are guiding the conversation, it is very mutual. The second or more time that you've seen her, she remembers small details of things that you said before. She shows what seems to be very genuine interest in you. She opens up to you or shares information with you that you have not asked about. She just wants to share her hobbies and her life with you and her life experiences with you. Just she's interested in the socializing, really, is what that comes down to. And most importantly, by far, there is some sense of a spark, some sense of a excitement, a giddiness, a something more that you would expect to feel in any of your relationships. When there is mutual chemistry, it is a thing that lives between you as opposed to just being you or just being her. Like, there is this thing that has its own energy that you can both feel. And I know that sounds a little hippie woo-woo. I'm not really that hippie woo-woo. There is that spark, the chemistry, whatever it is. I don't have great wording for it, but it's something you can feel. And a lot of times we doubt it because we doubt ourselves and we don't want to like make a fool of ourselves and things like that. But it's friendship plus, and you feel that plus. At least you're pretty sure you feel that plus. If you're not even sure if they like you as a friend, then there's definitely not that energy yet. That doesn't mean it will never be there, but it's definitely not there yet. In my opinion, if you cannot be sure, it's better to err on the safe side. Keep building the friendship, keep interacting, and see where things go. Try really hard to trust that when chemistry is there, that it will guide itself a little bit. As I said, there's kind of like an active living energy to chemistry or to spark or to mutual interest. And so if you're really on the line and you're not sure, give it more time. I feel like the more time goes on, when that spark is there, when that chemistry is there, you will continue to gain confidence in that feeling that it is in fact there. So it's okay to err on the safe side. One thing that I have seen that I think is good advice, if you do decide to take the risk and offer some way of connecting more when you're not 100% sure, is write down your number and offer it to her rather than asking for her number. There is a safety for women in being able to be the one who decides if they reach out rather than risking somebody knowing their number and potentially texting them. There's no risk really of her boundaries being violated or her comfort level being violated if it's up to her if she reaches out or not. But even that, I think, really should only be when you're like, I kind of think there's something here. It shouldn't be something that you just do with people you've newly met or people who you're not sure if they're even your friend yet. My take on all of this is that it's really unlikely to happen on dating apps. I think dating apps really stay shallow. They really do not let connection and trust and safety build very well at all. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope that you can try to hold on to the part of you that knows that you're somebody who is worth connecting with, and that it's just a matter of finding the right people to connect with. And that can be really hard. It's hard to even find a best friend. So many different values out there, so many different interests and hobbies, and chemistry is its own whole thing. And so try to hold on to the belief that you'll find your person. And but also, I think this method can result in finding good friendships, even if they don't turn into anything romantic, if you are truly okay with making friends. Friends are a wonderful thing. I apologize to anybody who saw the other video and felt like I really skipped over this like critical aspect of like, what if I've never even got a date? Because that totally makes sense, and I was just not really thinking about that, and that's so valid. And I still really think it's not about looks, it's not about money, it's not about weight. Not that those things don't matter at all, but they are not as big of a thing as people say that they are. I know so many people who find loving relationships who don't fit all of those stereotypes, myself included, in multiple ways. If you got anything out of this, I would love if you would give me a follow. I cover all kinds of different hyperfixations. I have ADHD and autism, so I get special interests in hyperfixations, kind of all across the board. I'm super into like therapy and psychology. I get into true crime stuff sometimes, just all kinds of different things. So if you like nerdy deep dives, especially with like a little bit of an armchair psychologist bent on them, give me a follow.